Great. So thank you everyone for being here this afternoon. I am Dr. Sarah Boyce. I'm the Director of Research and Education at the Linda Loring Nature Foundation. But today I'm representing the Nantucket Biodiversity Initiative, and we're going to get into some tools that many of us will be using throughout the week as we learn or participate in different events for the Nantucket Biodiversity Initiative. So I am going to share my screen. So bear with me one moment while we get the slideshow going. Great. All right. Well, once again, thank you all for joining me this evening, afternoon. We're going to talk about our how to use iNaturalist, what iNaturalist is, how we use it as a tool, and then how maybe we can add it into the events and thinking about the Nantucket Biodiversity Initiative. And so before we go too far, while I do work for the Linda Loring Nature Foundation, I've been part of the Nantucket Biodiversity Initiative for a long time, certainly in the 10 years that I've had this job, but even earlier in its founding. And so this week, as you may have heard, or the reason why you're here tonight is that the NBI is celebrating its 20th anniversary. It's kind of amazing to think that the Nantucket Biodiversity Initiative started in 2004, but you'll be hearing more about the history of NBI with some of the other events later this week. But this is just a kickoff to get us started for the tools, some of the tools that we might need to inspire us for learning more and thinking about biodiversity as we move along this week. And so with that, this is part of the Nantucket Biodiversity Initiative's 20th anniversary celebration. So if you haven't already and you found this iNaturalist workshop by another mean, definitely go to the Nantucket Biodiversity website, which is at the bottom here, for all of the different events that are happening throughout from tomorrow through Sunday. There's lots of different things to sign up for. Some things are just like they tell you the location and you show up. Everything is free to participate in, and they happen, as I said, tomorrow through Sunday. So there's lots of different ways to participate, lots of different habitats, and all of our or many of our organizations that are members of the Nantucket Biodiversity Initiative have different programs. So you'll get to go lots of different habitat types throughout the island with different organizations. And NBI is part of this movement called community science, or one of the things that NBI does is through community science, where it's a way for people to learn about the community, the nature around them, learn about science and data collection while participating in research, in cataloging biodiversity information. And so this whole event that we have this week is part of a community science program where we're learning about the natural environment around us on all these different properties. And we have some professionals, some non-professionals, and we want to encourage, we're all part of this community. And so we want to learn and work together. And also this is a shameless plug for me to put pictures of my son throughout his growing up and all the ways that I've made him contribute to biodiversity research through community science. And a big community science project that we certainly use here locally, but is actually a global community science project, is iNaturalist, which is what we're here to learn about today. So this screenshot is what you see when you first go to the iNaturalist website, if you do so on like a desktop computer. And so this is like the first page you see when you want to sign up. But first, let's talk about what is iNaturalist. So on the website itself, it says iNaturalist at its most basic is an online social network of people sharing biodiversity information to help each other learn about nature. And so that is a pretty broad description of what iNaturalist is. And so we go a little further to looking at how people use iNaturalist. In one instance, it's a crowdsourced species identification tool. So if you don't know what a species is, you can use iNaturalist to help you identify it. We'll go into how to do that. It's also an occurrence recording tool. So we can record every spring peeper frog that we see, and you can have a record of that. It's also a records database. So we can look at, have a record of every time a praying mantis was seen at the Linda Loring Nature Foundation property. We can have a record of that. And it's also a data source. So if I'm looking for information about either a certain species or a certain location, I can look at what other people have seen in that area. And then it's a collaboration tool. So you can use this as a tool across, you want to look at caterpillars of the Northeast. You can use this tool of iNaturalist to collaborate with others. And it is a global database at this point. And in getting ready for this talk today, I learned that just in the last week or 2 weeks, iNaturalist received the Heinz Award for the environment, which is a pretty substantial financial prize for them, which helps support iNaturalist, but it is for recognition of their decades of biodiversity contributing information. And when I say it's global, it truly is global. So iNaturalist started in the early 2000s, I think 2007 or 9, by master's level students who created the database to catalog their own information. And it has since grown into this global database. You can see on this map that every red dot is some kind of observation. And at this point, this screenshot was taken yesterday. There are over 212 million observations, which is astounding. And there are over 3 million observers, so 3 million individuals that have contributed data to this platform. And they've cataloged over 490,000 species across the globe. And it's really important because all of this information, all of the different records, the species information, the photos, the location information, combine into an algorithm that helps further identify pictures that you might submit. And the other thing that's kind of cool about this screenshot is you can see in the white box where it has some recent observations, there's photos of birds, there's a photo of an insect, but there's also a sound recording. And we don't really get into that, but I just wanted to say that there's lots of different ways that you can record species information. It doesn't necessarily have to be just a visual observation, but we'll get into a little bit more of how to do that in just a sec. So at its most basic, how iNaturalist works is that you record an observation, usually a photo, that's the most typical, and then you share that, you upload that to iNaturalist, and we'll go into the details of how to do that, but then you discuss your findings. And rather than discuss, I don't think that's the greatest verb to use. I think it's more about learning about your findings. So at its most basic, you can just take a picture of something and send it in and then see what happens. And we'll talk about that in just a sec. So iNaturalist is an online application. You can use it just through a desktop computer, but it's most effective when you use it through a smartphone device or an iPad, something where geographical information can be stored. But it works across all platforms, so there is a way to use it no matter what. And it's contributing to science. So just like when we talked about the community science aspect, every single observation you make, whether it's part of this NBI week or not, the observation contributes to science. People looking at really big species ranges and how things are changing or not changing, people who want to know about the biodiversity of the island or anywhere you might visit, all that information is contributed and available to researchers. So for our Nantucket Biodiversity Initiative, what do we want people to do? Well, there's a few different programs we'll talk about at the very end, the calendar of events that you can sign up for. But generally how it works is on any smartphone device, you download the iNaturalist app and you set up an account. You can set up an account ahead of time on a desktop computer. All you need is an email address and you create your own password. They might ask you too if you want a special name, like if you want to use your own name or if you want to use like a handle, so like a pseudonym for the iNaturalist database, and you'll see mine in a second. And then take a walk around Nantucket. Go explore some of your favorite places. Drive to an overlook or where you can see some birds. Take pictures of things that you see, and then you submit them to iNaturalist. This water snake here was contributed to a Bioblitz we did a few years ago. All the photos here are photos that are on Nantucket and from the iNaturalist website and have been recorded in different ways. So even if the person didn't know that this is a water snake, the community or the app itself could tell you, give you a suggestion, but also the community can help identify that species for you. So here is an example in real life. So maybe you see some living thing. Maybe you're walking around and you see this green bit of vegetation and you're not really sure what that is. It's just sprouting. It's this little green leaf. And you're like, hey, I want to know what that is. So you might whip out your camera on your phone and take a picture of it. And this is my son, Charlie, from a few years ago, and he didn't know what it was. And he took a picture of it, and then we submitted it to iNaturalist. And then it tells you it's a honeysuckle. It might not know what type of honeysuckle it is, but it knows it's a Lonicera. And so even if you don't have any knowledge of any of the plants or animals, but you see something interesting to you and you want to know what it is, this is a great tool to use. We're going to go into more details about how you identify things, but I just want to encourage people that at its most simple, you just take a picture. And as part of this, we're going to be using iNaturalist as a tool as part of our Bioblitz events. So some of the events this week for the Nantucket Biodiversity Initiative are what we call a Bioblitz. And if you can, tease apart the name, it's kind of obvious maybe what it is, but we're doing an intensive survey for any signs of life, an inventory of as many species as we can find in a short period of time. So for example, we at the Linda Laurie Nature Foundation on Thursday have a BioBlitz in the morning. It's going to be 2 hours where we're going to go out on the eastern side of our property and a few different habitat types within that property and survey for everything we can find: plants, animals, insects, any birds we might be able to see and or hear, and things like that. And so this BioBlitzes traditionally are scientists, community members, school groups, some experts, some not, because it's a combination of collecting the information and learning about it at the same time. And in that spirit, that's the biodiversity spirit, is how we're exploring the island in this next week. So if we're participating in one of these events, or even if you're just out and about on Nantucket and you want to contribute some information, let's walk through a scenario. So let's say I'm over maybe at Squam Swamp or something like that, maybe Squam Farm. And you see this little guy crawling around on the edge of the trail, and he's a very charismatic turtle species. You know it's a turtle. That's as far as you know. So you can take out your camera on your phone and take a picture. Now I have these two icons here because the easiest thing I think for most people is to take a photo with their phone, because most of us now have a phone available, camera available as part of your phone. Now, if you do have a nicer, sophisticated camera and you're really into using that, you definitely can use it like this other little cartoon here. However, you're just going to have to remember and record the geographic information. But anyway, you take a picture of this charismatic turtle. And then if you open iNaturalist, this is a screenshot of my phone. So the next couple of examples are going to be from my phone, which is an iPhone. So yours might look a little different. And I do have a few examples from a non-iPhone phone. But basically, this is what it first looks like when I open up my iNaturalist on my phone. And right away, I go to the bottom where it says observe. There's a little picture of a camera, and you're about to submit an observation. And then it gives you this choice. You can either use a camera, or you can either use the camera function on your phone through iNaturalist, or you can go to your photo library. So whatever photos are stored already in your phone. You can also record a sound, or you can have no media and just say that you saw something. But the best recommendation is to make sure you have a camera, or a photo rather, I'm sorry. And so I typically, oops, my thing isn't advancing. Okay, so I typically use Photo Library. This is just a tip to use. If you're on a nature walk or you're out and about, it's much easier to take a lot of photos of things and then upload it later. That's a choice you can do. You don't have to, submit right in the field. So, okay, let's go back. We got our picture of our turtle. We opened up iNaturalist, we clicked observe, and then we go to the photo library. And this is a same thing, but this is a screenshot of my friend's phone that is not an iPhone. So yours might look a little different. There's a plus button there instead of an observe button. And then there's a different suite of choices. The choices are the same, but the icons look a little different. So it just might look a little different on your phone, depending if you have an iPhone or not. Okay, going back to the phone. So this is mine again. So let's say I chose the cute photo of the turtle. And then this is the screen that you get. So one of the things I wanted to point out was the lower part of the screen is, to me, the most important piece of data. So you have the date of exactly when this photo was taken, and you have the time. So you know the time of day and the date. You also have the specific location. So it says Nantucket Island, but it has the latitude and longitude, the coordinates of this location for this turtle. And so those are the most important pieces of data, and it's totally amazing that we have this tool in our hands that has such high power and capability. When I was, early in my career, we didn't have any of these things. You had to take a GPS point for everything and then match it up with a photo and maybe a specimen. And there's a lot more to it. You can take one photo and have all this information already at your fingertips. So this is just information that automatically populates. You don't have to do anything. You can change it if you need to, but basically this is all you need to do. There's a notes section you can add if you want to make any specific notations. But the next most important thing, or the thing that I think is fun, if I didn't know what this turtle was, you can click, what did you see? And this is where that global database of observations comes in handy, because the algorithm looks at where you are and has some recognition of that photo and will make some suggestions. So it says, we're pretty sure it's in the genus Cressinus. So it knows it's a painted turtle. So you can feel pretty good about that suggestion. But if we want to go to species, you're like, you know what, that painted turtle looks like a really good choice. But you can click that little eye button to give you some more information without selecting anything. You can just click on that eye and go like, let me get some more information. And it takes you to a page where you can read like lots of information about the painted turtles. You can flip through more photos of painted turtles. You can look at a map of where painted turtles are most likely to be. And then with some confidence, you can say, you know what, this is a painted turtle. I'm going to select it. So you select it as a choice. Sorry, I pointed with my finger. No one can see me pointing. You can select painted turtle as a choice and then click the share button at the bottom. And then you can see it's syncing. It's thinking about it. It's adding painted turtle to your list of observations. Great. So that's the end of that story for you for the day. You've submitted that and you said, I think this is a painted turtle. And then this is where the second level of iNaturalist power comes in, where they have rigorous, or I'd say, I don't know about rigorous, but they have really good data quality, is that the community of scientists, researchers, and other naturalists then looks at this observation. And so for that particular painted turtle, here is the kind of chain of conversation that happened around this painted turtle. So I put painted turtle. Pretty much the same day, someone else who I don't know lives somewhere else said, you know what, that is a painted turtle. So confirmed the identification. And then a third person actually came up and said, you know what, not only is it a painted turtle, it's an eastern painted turtle. And so confirmed the identification and gave it the eastern designation. And so with enough people agreeing, that observation then becomes research grade. And so here's the observation now. I just went to like double check this observation from 4 years ago. And now not only can you see there's a little flag at the top that says this is a research grade observation, so people can use this to confirm distribution information about eastern painted turtles. You can see a map of Nantucket of where other eastern painted turtles have been seen and where that one was found, and have all that information. It also has me, my handle is @NatureNerd, which is embarrassing now to be showing all of you that, but it has me, it has how many observations I had. And so if there's ever a question about this record in the future, someone could get a hold of me and ask me any follow-up questions. So the other great thing about iNaturalist is that you as an individual can have a record of all of your observations. This might not be why you're doing this. Maybe you're just wanting to participate in our upcoming events or just contribute to Nantucket biodiversity information. But for me, I also like that we can like see all the things I've ever seen. This is just for my species page. It has like the things that I have observed the most, which is interesting to me because some of them are things that I have used in my research. So it makes sense that I've recorded them a lot. And then there's things I just like our pink lady slippers. I think I've taken many observations of those praying mantises as well. So this is another tool for yourself for cataloging the different things you've seen. I also like to use it when I'm on vacation, if I'm visiting a new nature or a natural area I've never been to before. It helps me identify species that I'm seeing maybe sometimes for the first time. As part of the Nantucket Biodiversity Initiative week, we have created what's called an iNaturalist project. And what that means is just like during this time period, actually from today, October 1st, all the way to October 7th, which is after the last day, but just to bookend it, we have every observation that's made in iNaturalist on Nantucket or Tuckernuck will be part of this kind of biodiversity collection. And so you don't have to officially join the project. It's just anything that's collected on Nantucket during this time period gets kind of curated in this way so that we can look at all the different biodiversity information that's collected during this week of October. I took this screenshot earlier today, so it's only the first few observations, which were by me because I didn't really tell anyone that we had made this project yet for today. But it'll be really exciting to see how we populate this throughout this week in October. Oh, and so the first image, sorry, this is a screenshot from if you look at iNaturalist on a desktop computer, you can kind of see a lot more. There's a lot more functionality. And then this little bit is from my phone. So this is if you're looking at the Nantucket Biodiversity Initiative project from a phone. And you can just see all the kind of tiles, the little pictures of observations that have been already made. And as I said, this is for all of Nantucket County. So that's a way to curate the information, is just putting a boundary around the entire of Nantucket County. So that is obviously the main island, Tuckernuck, and Muskeget. So if anyone gets out to Muskeget in the next week, that would be really great to add some biodiversity information. And just to show you what some of those data will look like, this is a similar project that we did in the summertime. So maybe some of you have participated in our summertime Bioblitz that was run between the Nantucket Land and Water Council and the Linda Laurie Nature Foundation. We've done this every July for the last 4 years. This was this past summer in 2024. We did it for a 2-week period in July. And this was the most successful one we ever had. So we have lots of species, and we don't expect to compete because it's October, and peak of growing season in July looks a little different than October. But these are this kind of information that we'll be able to get. We'll be able to look at what the species breakdown is, what the top species observed are, and things like that. So it's kind of a fun way to look at some of the species information that we get. And this is what iNaturalist naturally does. It just kind of curates it in this way. And these were our top species for July. And I put these up because it's kind of fun to think about what will our top species be for this week in October. So in July, we had bayberry was the top, which was interesting to me. Bayberry is still very visible right now and has, ripe fruit. Sickle-leaf golden aster, scrub oak, foxgrape. These are all some of the top species. That's really interesting to see. I don't know how many horseshoe crabs we'll be seeing this year in October, but I would love to be proven wrong if people want to venture out to the beach. I don't know about wood lilies. We might not see too many, if any, wood lilies at this time of year. The other thing that's fun to do is think about where species haven't been found before. So this is a portion of a map of all the observations that have ever been submitted to iNaturalist on Nantucket. So this isn't specific to any one project or year. These are all the observations. And I put this here because obviously we have some the different programs I've mentioned that are part of the NBI 20th anniversary week, and those will be kind of targeted locations. But I encourage people during this week in October to collect other biodiversity pieces of information. So if you're on a dog walk, or if you're taking a walk on the beach, on on the weekend, even outside of any of our specific programming, it'd be really great to see some additional biodiversity information submitted. And here I'm interested in like the areas where there haven't been any previous records. So there's a few pockets. I mean, some of them are, you know, more residential areas. So it would make sense that there's fewer fewer iNaturalist records, but there's some open pockets of land. Maybe they're forested areas that are kind of hard to go through. But this would be a really fun time to kind of explore some of those. Looking at the looking at the eastern end of the island, there's a lot more open pockets. The South Pasture area is ripe for iNaturalist observations. Parts of Coatue, parts around Sakasha Pond. There's some pretty nice open spaces that can be explored. Maybe but by towards the airport, between the South Pasture and the airport would be interesting. It'd just be kind of a fun way to explore some areas and add some information about areas that we haven't explored quite as much. And certainly areas that are difficult to get to have the fewest observations. And so if anyone's out cohogging or heading out to Coatue, maybe people are starting to go scalloping, it would be really fun to add some biodiversity information to those areas. So the last few slides I have are just about what an observation looks like and the types of things that we can see. So here's a really basic one, and this is one that a lot of us can see right now, is bearberry, one of our most common low-growing shrubs on the island. This picture has it in flower. Right now, you'll see it in fruit. This is a research-grade photo, excuse me, and this is kind of commonly what a record would be like. You take a picture, it's submitted, and then you get the information that it's been upgraded to research grade, and so is widely usable. But you also don't always need to see the individual, especially for animals. Maybe you're seeing evidence of an animal. So for example, this is a deer antler that I found as a shed in April of 2020. And so I took a picture of it where it was lying so that that location information was accurate. But this is still a white-tailed deer. Yes, I didn't have a picture of the live animal, but the deer shed is evidence of the animal. Similarly, like footprints in the sand or hoof prints for deer, perhaps sometimes we see bird feathers. Scat, I mean, it's fun when you take kids out and you let them take pictures of poop. That's always that's always a hit, as long as maybe there's some identifying characteristics that will help us get it to species level. We also, you know, I'm so terrestrial based. I think of land plants and animals and pond shore plants and animals. I don't spend as much time on the beaches using iNaturalist. That's something I need to get better at myself. But things in the flotsam and jetsam on the shores of the beaches are really great fodder for iNaturalist observations. We have lots of interesting things that wash up. Here we have dead man's fingers, or codium, which is a seaweed that is commonly seen on the beaches. And you might notice something different about this observation. There's a little pink exclamation point. And if you click on that, it gives you a little bit more information that this is an introduced species. So that iNaturalist will let you know if something is non-native. And that's actually a really important thing, not only, you know, for you as an individual collecting this information that you might want to know that, but it's also important in terms of collecting data. The more data we have about non-native species, maybe we're getting information about how they're spreading, maybe they're new to a region, maybe they have been here for a little while, but suddenly they're becoming more common. So that's an important piece of information as well. But it's also helpful as we're learning about the species that we're collecting data on. You can learn about what's native and not native in our area. Similarly, our Chinese mantis. I wanted to put this in here because what you're actually looking at, maybe you didn't know what this was. You saw this weird thing on a stick and you're like, what is that blob, right? Like that doesn't, I don't know what this is. Is it living? Is it not living? iNaturalist is only for living things, but if you're not 100% sure what it is, maybe you can put it on. So I did know that this is actually an egg case for a Chinese mantis, which is a kind of praying mantis or a mantid species. So you can have an egg mass, you can have something that is like pre the adult phase that we're thinking about. So, this is another one I put in as a Chinese mantis, and it was confirmed by multiple people. I'm also always excited because all of my mantid observations get confirmed by Mantodier, which is this person's not Instagram, I'm sorry, iNaturalist handle. They are a mantid expert, so they look at any mantid observation around the world. So we kind of know, it's kind of nice to know that your observations are being verified by experts in the field. And so then if you wanted to know, you could learn a little bit more about Chinese mantids. This is just another thing that's available on an iNaturalist website. If you're looking at specific species, you can learn about, for example, who the top observers are. So people who have observed it the most times. The top identifier, so Mantodier is the person that has been identifying all the mantid species globally. For the Chinese mantids, you can also get this seasonality figure, which I find really interesting because it's helpful to see when are they most likely to be seen. So people see them, throughout the year, but the big spike is in September and October because they're large adults at that time of year, or this time of year. So maybe somewhere along our journey this week, we'll find a Chinese mantis. I actually found one today and already put it on iNaturalist because they're quite large right now. So this is another kind of species to look for. But this is just one to show you some of the information you can get from iNaturalist. Not only are we contributing data, but we're learning from it as well. And then I wanted to share one more thing that people are likely to see, but it's for rare species. So I looked up, you can kind of, when you're exploring information on iNaturalist, I typed in the species New England blazing star, so Elytris nova anglii, which is flowering right now. It's kind of a little bit past peak, but you'll still see it flowering. And so every one of these orange reddish boxes is an observation. And, it's a signature plant of the sandplain grassland. So it's really interesting to see it way out here in the middle of the ocean off of Wellfleet, off the eastern side of Nantucket, in south of the vineyard, like what's it doing out in the ocean? And when we look a little more closely, here's one particular observation by Trish, if you know Trish. This is a beautiful photo of the flower heads of the New England blazing star. And this location, you can see it's south of Nantucket. It's this big green dot that I'm pointing at, if you can see the cursor. And it's in the middle of the ocean, but it has this big green fuzzy box around it. And what that means is that the observation is obscured. So iNaturalist is not telling you exactly where this plant is because it's a protected species. And you know that by looking at this, at the very top next to the species name, it says VU, which is for vulnerable. And if you click on that, for each species is specific to that species. So this one says the conservation status is vulnerable in Massachusetts. And there's, depending on the species, it'll say something different, whether it's an endangered species or what have you. But it's important to know that if you're finding some rare species, which even if they're common on Nantucket, they might be a state listed or federally listed rare species, iNaturalist will obscure that record. If you want to obscure it yourself because it's something maybe in your backyard or in an area that you don't want people to know that it is, you have that ability when you enter enter information to obscure that. And I can show you that in person if you come to one of our events. But in the interest of time today, we won't go into all those details. But just suffice it to say that iNaturalist is an amazing tool. There are lots of ways that you can use it to submit data, collect data, but also to learn from iNaturalist. You can learn about the species in your backyard, on your favorite trails. And in doing so, you're also contributing to our Nantucket biodiversity information. So we hope that you will join us. As I mentioned before, we have many different events this week. But even if you can't attend any of the events, we know that they're during the week, and some of them are on the weekends. Not everyone can attend, but maybe in your own time, if you want to still contribute to our biodiversity information, you can think about using or taking some iNaturalist records this week while you're out and about. And just to remind everyone, we have a really great schedule of events going on all this week. This is a quick schedule that you can see just for Wednesday and Thursday. There's great Bioblitzes at NCF and Linda Loring. There's a Head of the Plains Walk with Peter Brace Thursday afternoon. And there's wrap-up events at each day. And so even if you aren't able to participate in the day's event, we hope that you'll, if you have time, come to the social events at the end. You can hear about what people saw and kind of gather with fellow nature nerds and hear about kind of exciting finds. Later in the week, we have more events on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I want to especially mention the tribute to Bob Kennedy, hosted by the Mariah Mitchell Association on Friday. He was instrumental in creating or starting the Nantucket Biodiversity Initiative in 2004, and so he will be honored on Friday. Yeah, and so we hope, many of these events, as I said, every single event is free to attend. Many of them have registration, so I would double check on the NBI website, but some are just open to the public as well. There's detailed descriptions on the NBI website. And with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us today, for your attention and for listening to me go on about iNaturalist. We hope to see you out in one of these great events. And I'm happy to take any questions if there are any. I am going to stop sharing so that I can see any questions. All right, so if anyone has any questions on iNaturalist, about the Nantucket Biodiversity Initiative events, you can either type it in the chat or there is a Q&A little box at the bottom. So I'm happy to answer any questions. And thanks again for everyone for being here. Great. All right, well, it doesn't look like we have any questions. So I just want to remind everyone, if you don't already have an iNaturalist account, to head on over to iNaturalist, sign on with the email address and get the app downloaded to your phone. And the app is free. Everything is free as part of iNaturalist. And then you'll be ready to go for any of our events, or even if you just want to collect some iNaturalist information. Oh, Pam Murphy has a question. What's the name of the project for this week? Great question. So the project is called Nantucket Biodiversity Initiative 2024. So that's a way that you can join a project so that you can look at it and look at some of the information as it's coming in. We're going to be putting some updates about the project on both the NBI social media and our social media throughout the week, probably later towards the end of the week as we get some information. But like I said, if you don't have to join the project to contribute data, but it would be wonderful if you did, because then you'll see more of the updates. Here, I'll type it in the chat just to make sure if I say it. Okay, Nantucket Biodiversity Initiative 2024. Okay, well, I want to thank you again for being here. This presentation has been recorded, and so we'll be putting the link to the recording later tonight. I'll put that on the NBI website. We'll be emailing it to all the people who participated and registered this evening. And then we'll also be, I know for our future programs later this week, we'll be emailing the recording to others too, so they can have a refresher on iNaturalist before getting started.